So I just get excited when I talk about this story. What? No, it's not in the New Testament. You mean it's in the Old Testament? Isn't that where God is nasty and people die and stuff like that? Well, there's some of that. Well, there's a lot of that. But I mean, there's also extraordinary high points in the Old Testament that we miss if we don't read the Old Testament. I mean, extraordinary. In fact, a previous pastor of mine in California, he's now 92, I think it is, lives up in Idaho. I write him all the time, and every time I write him, I thank him. I say, thank you for introducing to me as a young Christian the wealth of the grace of God in the Old Testament. He would preach in the Old Testament, completely changed my whole idea about the Old Testament. Well, this is one of the cream of the top of a lot of the Old Testament. So what are we looking at today? Well, since it's Mother's Day, we're looking at this. Who said yes? Yeah, Deborah. So I'm going to do something today too. I'm going to try and pronounce for you a lot of the names in this account the way that they're pronounced in Hebrew. So in Hebrew, you got to understand B's and V's are many times interchanged. In fact, when you see a B in the Hebrew letter, it's often pronounced as a V. So when you do a V sound, your lower lip goes against your teeth. But with them, this particular consonant is the lower lip going slightly against your upper lip. So it's more like which sounds like a V. So Deborah is not pronounced Deborah, is Devrah. Devrah. Yeah. So I'm going to go back and forth between the English pronunciations and the Hebrew ones, just so we need to get straight what these things are all about. Devrah. And that's not her. And that's not her camel. But it is about a lonely palm tree in the middle of a desert. So that's what we're going to look at today. So here we go. Scene 1. Are you ready? And you'll have to wait to find out why we do this on Mother's Day, because this is not about an important birth. In fact, if you wanted to go to a woman in the Old Testament that had an important birth, you'd go to Hannah in the beginning of 1 Samuel, because she's the mother of Samuel. So that's where you'd go. That's a very famous birth. Mary in the New Testament, this is not about a birth that Deborah has. It's something else. So scene 1, chariots of wrath. Okay, so here's the situation historically in Israel. We're in Judges 4. If you've never read Judges, it's a crazy book. I just got to say this. It's ordained by God, and I'm not dissing God when I say that, but it's full of a bunch of accounts, a bunch of serial accounts between the time of when Israel came into the land, right? Remember when they came out of Egypt, they went into the land, Joshua brought them in. Between that time and the time that the first king of Israel came in, Saul, there was this funky period in between where what they did was they had no king, and that was on purpose on God's part. But then the issue is how do you solve disputes? Who's in charge? So they had a series of voluntary judges that would come in place, and they would adjudicate matters for people. But technically, on paper, during the time of Judges, God was the king of Israel. So much so that when you get around to the first king of Israel, Saul, it turns out the people themselves are saying, we are tired of this God as king thing. We want a king who rides around on a white horse, who's tall and handsome and blah, 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 blah. We want a king like everyone else has. The prophet Samuel got really ticked off, because he realized that as a spokesman for God, God was the king of Israel. They had to figure out how to work with that. They didn't want that. So in the end, God has to calm Samuel down and say, okay, look, calm down. Let's give them a king, and let's see how that works out. And that king was Saul. And then came David. So this is the funky time before that, where there is no king, and justice is kind of a flighty issue. And the byword of all of the book of Judges is they did what was right in their own eyes. And so how did that work out? Poorly. And we'll talk more about this. But this is one of the better times in Judges. So then the sons of Israel again did evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died. By the way, if you don't know who Ehud is, go back and read the previous chapter 3. But you have to have a good stomach for it, because there's some graphic violence in it. So anyway, now you're intrigued. Just read Judges. So we're in chapter 4 of Judges. So they're doing evil. So this is the cycle that goes on in Judges. And this happens, I don't know, half a dozen times in the book of Judges, where Israel disobeys God. Then they're oppressed because God releases his ability, not his ability, he releases his hand from protecting them because he's their protector. Then they're oppressed. Then they cry out because things are bad. Duh. And then God raises up a deliverer. Woohoo! And Israel's delivered. Yay! And Israel's at peace. Yay! And then they sin again. They go around this loop over and over in Judges. So we're in one of those loops today. We're at the top of the story where Israel disobeys, as you can see right there in verse 1 of chapter 4. Okay. So the Lord sold them into the hand of Yabin, or Jabin if you're English. Yabin, the king of Canaan. Looks like Canaan. It's Canaan. There it is, Canaan. Who reigned in Hazor? No, Hatzor. I love that. If you go visit Israel today, there's some very famous archaeological digs in Hatzor, and they will school you on how to say it. We're coming to Hazor today. Yeah, what's here in Hazor? And they go, no, Hatzor. It's one of the great things. Hatzor. So Jabin, the king of Canaan, he reigned in Hatzor, and the commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. This is going to be hard. So this is the name of a very small village. Hagoyim. Goyim means the world, nations, the Gentiles. To this very day, if you talk to an Orthodox Jew, they'll say that you, if you're not a Jew, you are part of the Goyim. You're a Goy. That word right there. You're part of the world. You're not part of Israel. Hagoyim. And Harosheth means woods. So this is the woods of the nations is what this is. Really? Okay, so you get what's going on. They're being oppressed. They're being oppressed by Yabin, who lives actually up in Hatzor. And he has a famous commander. You're going to have to know both these names because without a program, you don't know the players. So, and then his famous general is Sisera, who lives in Harosheth Goyim. Okay, so there we go. They're the ones who are oppressing Israel. So we go from Israel disobeys to now Israel is oppressed by these guys. And God allows it. You see the verse in verse 2? It says that God sold them into the hand of him. They actually was deliberate on God's part. So verse 3. So then the sons of Israel cried to the Lord, for he had 900 stinking chariots of iron. 900. And we'll talk about that in a second. That's just fantastic. And he oppressed the sons of Israel severely for 20 years. So this place is this Harosheth Hagoyim. It's actually in Israel. And they planted themselves there strategically. And we'll look at why that is the case. But because they had chariots, they could rule the area and they could oppress the area severely. So now this has been not a couple of years, not 10 years, 20 years. God has allowed this to go on. It's been horrible. So they've gone from Israel being oppressed to now Israel cries out. They finally go, oh, God, help us. Now, if God was kind of a punitive guy, he'd say, well, you never listened to me when things are going good, so why do you want me to listen to you when things are going bad? He doesn't do that. He goes through the cycle over and over in Judges and through the life of the kings as well. So they cry out to God. Now, this is what a chariot looks like. Not a bad representation of a Persian era one, so that's actually sometime later, but still, these were the supreme war machines of that time. Supreme. Absolutely supreme. And so you remember when they left Egypt, Pharaoh followed them with chariots. That's the supreme war tool. For us, when we think about modern military warfare on the battlefield, on a flat battlefield, the reigning piece of military equipment is a tank, right? Made of metal, made of steel, hardened armor all around. You can shoot a machine gun at it and no one gets hurt inside. I mean, you can shoot something, you can shoot some other things and it'll get destroyed. But I mean, it is the supreme battlefield thing, made of iron, made out of iron. That was what a chariot was. That's what a chariot was. So if you envision this, think of a battlefield, a flat battlefield, and you're out there with a sword and maybe a lance and a shield, so you can do hand-to-hand combat with those as your defensive weapons. When a chariot comes around, you're almost defenseless. He can come by so fast from behind you, he can come up and zoop and lop off your head before you can even have a chance to turn your shield around. I mean, it's a massive military war machine. So when the writer of Judges writes that they had 900 iron chariots, it's like, well, who goes out on a battlefield against that? Nobody does. And so this is why these guys ruled for 20 years. 20 years. Here's another picture, and I wanted to show this. This is a little darker, unfortunately. But here, this shows something that we probably think they had on their chariots. If you look down here on the hub of the wheel, there's a thing sticking out. It's called a scythe. It's just a sharpened knife that's about 3 feet long, 4 feet long, and there's two of them on this particular chariot because there's two wheels on this one. But that scythe would go out at about thigh level, waist level, and as the chariots came by, if you wanted to get close to a chariot to try and swing your sword at this guy, you had to dance around that scythe that was on the hub of the wheel, because it would basically, they would mow down people in these chariots. They would see a bunch of people and then even come from the front and just pile this chariot through the people, and these scythes on the side hubs of the chariots would just completely cut people in half. Not a fun warfare device if you're in the defense. So this is why this is just a stunning thing. So here we're going to do a little geography today. Here's the nation of Israel at the time. That's where these are all tribal names of Israel, and the 12 tribes. You'll only see there's the 12 tribes right here. Okay, so where is Hatzor? It's up here in the north of the Sea of Galilee. Okay, it's up in the north. That's where the evil king Yabin is. And then over here you have Harosheth Hagoyim, where the evil commander Sisera is. They're far apart, and there's a reason why they're there. Strategically, it's a very interesting kind of focus. It's a neck point. It's a choke point in many ways. This right here in green is a valley that basically goes from the Mediterranean Sea down to the Jordan River Valley. And the Jordan River Valley at this point is about 700 feet below sea level at this point. That's where the Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level. Most people don't know that. It's the lowest freshwater lake in the world. 700 feet. So this valley that goes from the Mediterranean on the left to the Jordan River Valley on the right slopes down about 700 feet down from the sea level. And it's really the only valley connection between the Mediterranean and the valley that goes between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea, where the Jordan River is. It's the only way across. Everywhere else on this map, if you want to go inland from the Mediterranean, you have to cross mountains. This valley is like a highway to come in. So if anyone wants to come in from the water in the Mediterranean and invade, you would see this as a strategic area, because this area right here, this valley, is flat as a pancake. It is just flat. And by the way, chariots need flat ground. They don't work well in mountains. They need flat ground. So as a result, it turns out that Harosheth Hagoyim right there is at a choke point in that valley. You can control everyone that comes in from the Mediterranean if you can control that choke point. And so to show you, what I did was I stood right here on Google Earth and looked up toward the Mediterranean, toward what today is Haifa on the coast up there, and it looks like this. So there's the Mediterranean up there. Here's this valley choke point. There's a mountain right here. There's a mountain right here. And this is the flatness as you look out to the Mediterranean, and that flatness continues behind us as you go east. But what I want you to see on today, on 2025, Google Earth, there's a town on this map right there. I'll increase it. Kiryat Harosheth. It's the same word. 3,000 years later. Are you kidding me? Yes, it's historical. There it is right there. So this pinch point is a way to keep anyone coming in from the sea from coming into the whole inner part of Israel. This is the pinch point, and it's very narrow. It's about 2 miles wide. So if you can control this pinch point, famously, you can control everyone coming in. So when Yabin said, I want to protect people coming in from the coast, Phoenicians largely, then Sisera, what you need to do is set up your camp right here at this pinch point, and you can control not only people coming into the country, but you can control all the access to the whole inner plain that's there. By the way, that plain, that green plain that I showed you that extends behind our back in this picture, is very famous. It's called the plain of Megiddo, or Armageddon. So it turns out that the Battle of Armageddon that's talked about in end times literature will be on this plain. What? Yes. We are learning so much today. So, okay. Okay, scene 2. That's the setup. Scene 2. A mother in Israel. By the way, this is why we're studying this today, because that's how she's referred to in this passage. Really? Why? Because she gave birth to some famous men? No. By what comes next. Verse 4. Now Deborah, a prophetess and the wife of Lapidoth was judging Israel at that time. So remember I said the judges were people who voluntarily adjudicated differences that people had. Who do we go to? We can't go to the county commissioner. There is none. We can't go. You can go many places, but what they would do is they would set up shop and they would say, okay, from 9 to 5 today, if you come to where I am, I will adjudicate your case and I'll tell you right and wrong, da-da-da-da. And so it turns out that Deborah was one of those. Deborah was one of those. And the fact that this is a woman is even more astonishing. In fact, some Orthodox Jewish communities will talk about the book of Judges. And as they talk about the book of Judges, and they'll say, it was a time when crazy things were going on. They did what was right in their own eyes. In fact, it was so crazy, they even appointed a woman a judge. That bad. Of course, they didn't appoint her. She just showed up. She just showed up. And what she did was she used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the sons of Israel came to her for judgment. This is all voluntary. It was a voluntary court. It was like a people's court. And Deborah would take her lawn chair. She'd go out under this palm tree, a palm tree. She'd sit under the palm tree because you need shade where they are. And she'd sit there and she'd just wait for people coming with problems. Because that's how respected she was. She had a godly wisdom that was uncommon amongst a lot of people, and which was true of all the voluntary judges you see in the book of Judges. God had a special way with them, and so they didn't have to be appointed to the positions they were in. They were just respected by the people, and people they'd say, okay, you owe me some money. Well, no, I don't owe you money. Yeah, you promised you to, tell you what, let's take it to a judge. And they would stand in front of Deborah, and they'd say to Deborah, whatever you say, we'll do. Wow, that was Deborah. That was Deborah. Great reputation. Okay, so we'll keep our map going. She's down here. She's in Ephraim. That's where Deborah's palm tree was. Hatzor up there where King Yabin and his general Sisera, who's over here in Hasheth HaGoyim. Okay, so you got to get this straight because the geography is very important. Now, this is Deborah, she sent and summoned Barak, the son of Abinoam from Kedesh Naphtali, and said to him, I'll show you where these places are in a second, but she beckons this guy Barak, okay? And she says, behold, the Lord, the God of Israel, has commanded. He's told me something, Barak, and so here you go. This is what God has said. Go and march to Mount Tabor and take with you 10,000 men from the sons of Naphtali and from the sons of Zebulun, and I will draw to you Sisera, the commander of Yabin's army, with his chariots and his many troops to the river Kishon, and I will give him into your hand. This is Deborah saying, this is what God has told me. Now, who's Barak? He's the general. He's a general of Israeli forces. And he's going to believe her? Well, let's sketch this out a little bit more. So where are we? We have to enlarge this area right here. So remember where we are. So there's Sisera, there's Hatzor, where the Yabin is. Up there's Kedesh. So Kedesh is up there even further north than Hatzor, but it's in that same area of the tribe of Naphtali. And this is Mount Tabor. It's in the middle of the chariot zone. It's right there in the middle of that very, very flat valley. And so she comes to him, to Barak, and says, what you need to do is find 10,000 soldiers in those two upper tribes, and you need to bring them down south, and you need to put them on top of this little mound called Mount Tabor. And then that will lure Sisera's chariots out, and you'll attack them, and you'll win. And Barak says, what? This is not a great strategic plan. I will illustrate that a little bit more right here. They're going to come down. They're going to all go up on top of this 15-foot elevation mound from our description, and that'll lure out all the chariots from Harasheth, and then you'll have a fight there, and God says you'll win. According to God, according to Deborah. Oh, really? Well, Barak says this. This is a nice thing. Okay, well, if you'll go with me, then I will go. But if you won't go with me, I won't go. Yeah, he's saying, Okay, Deborah, if you think this is going to work, you go with me and we'll do it. And she says, well, I'm no soldier. No, this is what she says. She says, I'll surely go with you. Yeah, I'll surely go with you. Nevertheless, and this is an interesting PS on this, nevertheless, the honor shall not be yours on the journey, Mr. General Barak. It won't be yours on the journey that you're about to take. For the Lord will sell Sisera, the evil general, into the hands of a woman. There. Don't you love her already? If you'll go with me, I'll go up there. But only if you go. If you don't go with me, I'm not going up there. I'll go. But just in case, you feel glory coming on, guess what? When Sisera goes down, you're not going to get the glory. A woman will. Whoa. So here we go. So Deborah went to Barak up to Kadesh. So the two of them are way down here where her palm tree is. They go all the way back up here to Kadesh up there. And there's the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. And then Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali, those are the two tribes, together in Kadesh. And so anyone who's a soldier, they need 10,000 of them. They all kind of bivouac up there in Kadesh. So they get ready to do this. And 10,000 men went up with him. And Deborah also went up with him. So they take those 10,000 men, they come down, they climb to the top of this little 1,500-foot mound, and they wait. They're bait. They are their own bait. What? Now, if you're a military strategist at this point, you're going, this is the dumbest plan I have ever heard in my life. We'll see why in a second. So scene 3. Where's Hever? Sorry, it's Hever. Well, this is actually a setup. He should have talked about this earlier. This has nothing to do with the story we've talked about so far. This is a background thing. So when you get a little background thing in a movie, this is a background thing. Now, Hever the Kenite had separated himself from the Kenites. Where are the Kenites normally? They're normally way down here in the desert south of Israel, okay? Way down here. But he separated himself from his people, from the sons of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak of Zaananim. That's a good one. Zaananim, which is near Kadesh. So what he did is he moved from here, this is the setup, and he moved way up to Kadesh, which is way up there. We just saw on the map. So, just hold on. This is setup. Now, the Kenites are special. In 1 Samuel 15, when we talk about Saul, the first king, and he's rampaging against the enemies of Israel, Saul said to the Kenites, he says, now go down from among the Amalekites, big enemies, so that I do not destroy you with them. For you showed kindness to all the sons of Israel when they came up from Egypt. So the Kenites, even though they're not Israelites, they were friendly when they came out of Egypt. They actually showed them some kindness. And so King Saul says, well, I'm going to go down. I'm going to take down the Amalekites. You need to get away from them so we don't kill you as well, because we want to be good to you because you were good to us. That's the Kenites. Kenites, not Israeli, but friendly historically to Israel, which I think is the only reason why when Hever left the Kenite area in the south, he was allowed to go through that whole Israel area and even plant himself in a tribe up north, which is really unusual because they're long-term friends of Israel, but not Israelis. That's the setup. Okay, then we get to scene 4. Scene 4, chariots versus sticks. This is going to work out well. This is the dramatic part in the middle of the movie. Verse 12. Then they told Sisera and Barak, the son of Abinoam, that they had gone up to Mount Tabor. They told Sisera this, and they go, this is the best thing ever. Everyone's going to die. So Sisera called together all his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all the people who were with him. The entire bivouacked area up here in the pinch point, everyone came out. And they came out from Harosheth Hagoyim to the river Kishon. Now, where's the river Kishon in all this? Well, this valley has a small stream. I wouldn't call it a river, a small stream that runs through here. And it doesn't flow from the Mediterranean down to the Jordan River, because if it did, the Mediterranean would empty itself into the middle of the country. No, in fact, it flows backwards. It flows from this middle area right in here, from here toward the Mediterranean. And because of geography, this is kind of weird. It flows from here to the Mediterranean. From here, then you lose 700 feet in elevation down to the Jordan. But this river is just right here. It's actually on the side center of this beginning portion right here. And because of the way the geography is right here, many times it turns out that this area, to this very day, in here, is all kind of swampy, because the elevation from here to the Mediterranean is very slight. So any water that goes into there kind of gushes up. Today, a lot of Israeli efforts after the Six-Day War was to reclaim this area, because it was just a swamp. It was cattails and gush, right? But it turns out that periodically they would go through droughts. The river Kishon would dry up, and then the gush that's there would go away, and you'd have hard-packed mud that's now dried hard as a rock. And so that's what the chariots were running on. The chariots are running on basically a drought season on the Kishon River. So they came to the river Kishon. So they came from here somewhere into a route in here, okay? Right about there. So they come in and they're on their way to Mount Tabor, where the stupid Israelis decided to put all their troops on top of a mound. Who in the world? This is sitting ducks. This is going to be great fun, Cicero's thinking. So here's a picture of Mount Tabor today. It's a bump in the middle of a flat plain. That's about 1,500 feet high. It's a bump. It's a bump. Here in Utah, we can't call that a mountain. It's a bump. But it's the significant high place in all of this entire area. And where it's Harashol Hagoyim, it's way over here, way over here. They have to come down a piece of the flat land and then come this way. So let's relive this a little bit. That's what they're going to do. And when they get to the mound, they're just going to surround it and starve it out. And you don't lose a single soldier. You just completely encompass it and say, hey, how's it going up there? We're going out and we're killing game all the time. We're eating all the time. We're having fun up here. How about you guys? Run out of food yet? Run out of water yet? How's it going up there? And if you look at it, it's relatively barren. I mean, there's just not much up there. So that's all they got to do. They don't even have to fight. All they have to do is circle them, wait till they run out of supplies. This is why it's a stupid, stupid, stupid idea militarily. And when they run out of supplies, they'll try and sneak out one at a time. We'll kill them one at a time as they sneak out to find food and water. Psh, this is easy. So this is a sure deal from Sisera's perspective. We'll just do this. Okay? Well, let me sneak up a little bit on where the battleground's going to be. This is present-day Tabor, as you see it on Google Earth, and you can go see it yourself. Okay, so sure enough, what they're going to do is they're going to come from that way far point way up there, and they're going to come right here, and they're just going to encircle them. At the top of Mount Tabor is 10,000 troops. The great general Barak and the great judge, the most wise and godly woman who judged all in the south, the wise, godly woman, Deborah, is up there with them. Probably the only woman in their midst. Because after all, it's her fault that we're here. So at this point, when they get closer, Deborah says to Barak, arise, arise, this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Behold, the Lord has gone out before you. What did she see? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. Suicide mission, right? Well, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army with the edge of the sword before Barak. What? 900 chariots versus 10,000 footmen? What? So presumably somewhere in this valley, this flat plain leading up to Tabor, they Israelis won. And Sisera alighted from his chariot and fled away on foot. So I'll put him in the picture. Boom, there he is, and then he gets away and he runs, and he's running to the north. There he goes. Okay. So there's a clue here about why this battle went the way it did, because he didn't go on his chariot. If you're gonna escape and you saw that your guys were losing, wouldn't you stay in your chariot and steer your horses away and take your chariot and go? It says he alighted. He got out of his chariot. Must have run out of gas. But he gets out of his chariot. That's a key clue right there. He gets out of his chariot and he runs away. And he runs to the north, and he's out of there, right? Well, Barak and all the people of the Israelis, they want to take down the general of that side. They want to find him, but he's not there anymore. He's gone to the north, and someone knows he goes to the north, so they follow him up there. Barak pursued the chariots before he could follow him, pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harasheth Hagoyim, and all the army of Sisera fell by the side of the sword, by the edge of the sword, and not even one of them was left. Not even one. So what they did, since Harasheth is over here, they pushed him all the way back that entire plain, and then pushed him up to the backside that goes out to the Mediterranean, right where Harasheth is. Not one of them is left. The only guy that's left is the general, Sisera, because he decided to jump out of his chariot and run to the north. Why run to the north? Well, the north is where Yabin, the king of the area, his boss is Yabin, the king. He's up there. I'll go up to Yabin's area, so he runs off to the north. Okay. Scene done. And they all lived happily ever after. The end. Thanks for coming. No, this is not the end of the story. But in most fictional stories, this would be the end, right? You know, that we won. We killed them all. The only one left was Sisera, right? We killed them all. So now we can go back to peace. We can stop the 20 years of oppression. No, there's more. And the question that remains in our minds is, what in the world happened right here? Now we know who was responsible for the victory was God. Just no question, because that's what the writer says. God did this. But like how did he do it? Was it maybe like, I don't know, flaming balls of fire from heaven and came and only killed the bad guys? No, I don't think that's it. I mean, what exactly happened? Well, clue number one, Sisera kind of got out of his chariot and ran on foot. Something's wrong with his chariot. Number two, if you read the next chapter in Judges, this is Judges 4, Judges 5, which we won't read all of today, is the recorded song. There was a song that was written to commemorate this big thing right here. A song, it's called the Song of Deborah and Barak, and it's there. And in that song, there's some tremendous clues about what exactly went down. The Song of Deborah and Barak, here it goes. Listen to this part. This is in Judges 5, verse 21. It's part of the song. The torrent of Kishon swept them away. Oh, wait, I thought you said that the Kishon was dry and small. Well, maybe not this season. And maybe not before Sisera and all his chariots left Harasheth Hagoyim. Maybe it was still dry. The torrent of Kishon swept them away. The ancient torrent, the torrent Kishon. When she says the ancient torrent, what she's saying is that this is normally a dry area. But you know how we talk about here having a 100-year flood? 100-year flood. What great timing. What a coincidence. The ancient torrent, the torrent Kishon. Oh, my soul, march on with strength. I love Deborah. And then, very descriptively, verse 22, and then the horses' hoofs. Remember, they pull the chariots? The horses' hoofs beat, and this is poetic, from the dashing of the valiant steeds. It's a bad word to use, dashing, because it doesn't mean they're running. It means, you know when a horse gets stuck and it's constantly hitting with its hooves, trying to get out of it. That's that sound, right? It's the dashing. So clearly, the chariots got stuck in what? In the mud. They got stuck in the mud of a 100-year flood that overflowed the Kishon River, that filled up this whole valley, which is like a big bowl. And as they came out of Harasheth Hagoyim and came into this big bowl of junk, they got stuck, and the horses are dashing their feet, and they can't get out, and they can't get out. Ooh, whip, ooh, can't get out. It's the best dramatic thing I can do for it. So clearly, according to the song, God brought a 100-year rainstorm and a flood. The Kishon River, which is normally quite tamed and small, even to this day, it's very diminutive. It's more like a creek. But it overflowed. It filled up this valley that was closest to Mount Tabor, very close to it, but it's like a bowl. They come out valiantly and courageously, and they come into this yuck, and they get stuck. And so what did Deborah see? She looks out, and she sees them stuck in the mud. She says, Barak, this is it. Go. And he comes down the hill, and he slaughters them while they're standing in their chariots because they can't go anywhere. Now, if you've got a chariot, if you're a chariot driver, and you see these guys coming down the hill at you, the first thing you do is whip the horses harder because you want to get away from them. Because if they get close to you, you're dead. right? I mean, the advantage you have as a chariot is speed and surprise and attack. You don't have that anymore. So would you be faced with the choice of either staying in your chariot and trying to whip the horses, trying to get them out, or do you go out on foot? Well, as a trained chariot person, I'd stay and say, well, the horses will get out in a second. Right? Whip, whip, whip. Israelis come up and kill him because they wouldn't get out. The guy who saved himself was the general who alighted out of his chariot and ran. What? Now, I said before, kind of tongue-in-cheek, what a coincidence. And you could say, well, God didn't do this. There was just a 100-year storm. Yeah, but who brought the storm and who brought it at this particular moment? I mean, we're talking a moment. It brought the storm not before they left Harashith HaGoyim, so they would be bold enough to come out, but when they started to traverse this large area right here, that's when the storm come, and that's when the flooding happened. So it would take them by surprise. It's a God thing. So let's sum up Deborah. She's a judge, which means that she benefits from the wisdom from God. We don't know much about her character, but we do know that she listens to God. It's a big deal. Number 2, she's a messenger. She brought instructions from God to Barak. And so she said, this is what God has said. And she had enough reputation and credentials that Barak would take her seriously rather than laugh at her in her face. Even though he kind of, hedged his bet and said, well, if you'll go with us, we'll go. She'll back down. Oh, yeah, I'll go. And so she goes. So she's instructions from God. She communicates what God says faithfully. And she's a leader. Why? Because she walked the talk by trusting God. Whatever God said, she said, I will do that. So if God says, Barak, you need to go and take these guys down, I will go with you. And instead of being a leader that tells you what to do and I'll stand on the side and watch, she goes right smack dab in the middle of it because she believes and trusts what God has said. Now, I point those things out because these qualities for a woman at this time are remarkable. They're remarkable. And it's not saying that for a woman this didn't happen routinely, but we just don't get much press about the fact that women in that culture and in the ancient cultures didn't have a high standing. They were really looked down upon. They had menial tasks to do in the home. They were to raise kids and the whole 9 yards. But here's a woman who in the entire spectacle of the Old Testament just stands out with very few other women in the entire Old Testament. I mean, she is there. She is there. Another one I mentioned already is Hannah. If you don't know much about Hannah, read the beginning of 1 Samuel. Remarkable woman. And her song is famous as well. Just a remarkable. I love this woman. I hope there'll be a chance in heaven to take her aside and say, can you tell me more about that day? I mean, it's just a remarkable woman. This is what she said at the beginning of her song. This is how bad things were in Israel. The highways were deserted because chariots can come on you on a highway. The highways were deserted. Travelers went by roundabout ways. They snuck around, not taking the main roads or trails, so you wouldn't be seen. And the peasantry ceased, which means that the normal village life ceased because everyone was hiding so they wouldn't be heard. The peasantry ceased. They ceased in Israel. Well, until I, Deborah, arose, until I arose, a mother in Israel. There's a little humor in that statement. Until I arose, the great general of Israel? No. Until I arose, the great prince of Israel? No. Until I arose, the great religious leader of Naphtali? No. Until I arose, a mother in Israel. It's a wonderful statement because it has nothing to do with placement or power or authority or even officialness about what you do. It's about the fact that she and her relationship with God changed everything. She listened to God. She trusted what God said. She judged in a righteous way like God would judge. Now that's great news for all of us because just like her, we are all nobodies. Can you change the world as a nobody? Well, no, you can't, but God can. And once you realize that as a nobody, God can use you in powerful ways, then God says, great, hold on, I'll get back to you on that. And he can use you in remarkable ways. Now, that's not to say, and I want to say this really powerfully, that's not to say that being a mother of children is not powerful, because mothers of children are actually, they're sculpting the next generation of leaders and influencers in the culture. Who else does that? Now, fathers, maybe in the same way, in a different way, fathers do the same way. But mothers, I'm really put off by the fact that in this culture today, motherhood is seen as kind of a punishment, or as a punishment. In every way we can think of, we don't want to have kids. Because what I would rather do is climb up the ladder in my accomplishments in the corporation that I'm going to that markets potato chips, and I think that's a worthwhile end for my life. I don't want to be too flippant about that. That was a quote I heard from a woman, Mary, who was married to a pastor. But I heard her say it, and I said, you're right. Perspective is everything. What is it you aim to do in life? Do you aim to make a corporation successful? And there's nothing wrong with that, because we can glorify God in that context. But think about the greater picture. You will actually be raising the next generation of people who could have an influence on the culture that you can't even imagine. Can't even imagine. And in your spare time, like Deborah, you save the world. It's just really great. It's just really great. The highways were deserted. The travelers went by roundabout ways. The peasantry ceased. They ceased in Israel until I, Deborah, rose. Until I rose. A mother in Israel. Yeah. You got to love this lady. Hey, there's more. That's not the end of the story? No, that's still not the end of the story. You're going to have to hold on to your seats. This is crazy stuff right here. Okay, what happens next? Scene 5. If tent pegs are outlawed, then only outlaws will use tent pegs. That was an old phrase from gun control about 20 years ago. If tent pegs are outlawed. Okay, if you've read this before, you're starting to squirm in your seat. Here we go. Okay, back to our map. Now Sisera, he fled away. There he goes. He goes all the way up to happy, friendly area, to Hatzor, where Yabin is. That should be friendly area. And then, remember Hever, the Kenite, the ancestral friend of the Israels who moved from the Kenites down here to live in the midst of the Israelis up there? Remember him? Friendly ground. So he goes up there. That's where he goes. He figures, I'm going to run as far away as I can that direction, which, by the way, the path he takes is very hard for people to follow. I mean, it's a tough track up there. So he goes up that direction to find refuge. He goes up there, and there was... Now Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Hever, the Kenite, and there was peace between Yabin, the king of Hatzor, and the house of Hever of the Kenites. So remember, they're kind of, for some reason, it turns out that Yabin and all of this stuff has got a truce, a peace truce with Hever, who's up in that area. So according to Sisera, what I need to do is go up to friendly ground. That is friendly ground, and I won't go to where Yabin is. Because if the Israelites are coming and chasing me, they'll figure that's where I am, right? Because that's safe ground. That's where the king is. And the king probably has more troops if they're protecting him. So I won't go there. They won't find me there. This is great. I'll go through there, and I'll go to Hever's house, and they won't even think I'll ever be there, right? So Yael went out to meet Sisera. By the way, you know what Yael means? Well, in the Kenite language, it's kind of an Aramaic thing. It means mountain goat. It tells you something about her sturdiness, is what it does. But for a Jew who reads this story, who doesn't know that her name in that other foreign language means mountain goat, they would say, Yael, wait a second, we did this with Daniel. Yah is the short prefix for God. El is a prefix for God. It looks like God. Doesn't it? So from a Jewish folklore perspective, they would look at Yael and go, wow, she's got the best name ever. Her name is God. No, other language, it's mountain goat. The mountain goat's more illustrative in what happens next. Okay, so Yael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, in my best Yael voice, oh, turn aside, my master. Turn aside to me. Don't be afraid. Anyone who talks to you like that, you should run away from, by the way. And he turned aside to her into the tent, and she covered him with a rug. There. Now, he ran a long ways, right? I mean, he's beat. He's really tired. So she takes him in there and tucks him in. And he said to her, please give me a little water to drink. I'm thirsty. You can see him hugging his blanket. I'm thirsty. So she opened a bottle of milk and gave him a drink, and then she covered him. Well, that's an elegant drink, actually. That's a drink of great honor. I'll open some milk for you. How about that? Oh, thank you, Mommy. Okay, this is what's going on. So she opened a bottle of milk, gave him a drink, and then she covered him again. She tucks him in again. And he said to her, as he's kind of falling asleep on the floor there, he says, okay, listen, stand in the doorway of the tent, and it shall be that if anyone comes and inquires of you and says, is there anyone here? You shall say, no, there's nobody here. So before he falls asleep, he says, that's my charge to you. If anyone comes, why did he say that? Well, he's pretty sure that Barak and all the guys are coming up the road. If they come and say, hey, lady, anyone in there? No, no one's here. That's what he tells her to do. But Yael, Heber's wife, took a tent peg, seized a hammer in her hand, and went secretly to him, drove the peg into his temple, and it went through into the ground, for he was sound asleep and exhausted. What? What? Is this your favorite part, Sheila? Okay. Now, just a few technical pointers about putting a tent peg through someone's head. You have to do it on the first hit. Because if you get him close to him and he's right, and you're not really good at this, you're going, think, oh shoot, and then he wakes up, what are you doing with that? Right? It would be over. She's got to get this thing positioned, sneak up behind him when he's not looking, and one blow, or else he'll wake up. One blow. Now you know what Yael did for a living. She put tents up all the time. Right? So she's quite expert in how to do this. So while he's all tucked in, little milk still in his lips, and he's resting because he hasn't slept for probably days, she grabs a tent peg, a long tent peg, something that's longer than the width of your head. Am I being too gross here? She positions it, and with one whack, he's dead. And that whack goes through into the ground. Now, this makes you a little squeamish because of the violence. Then disregard what I said before about reading the book of Judges. because this is nothing compared to the rest of the book of Judges. I mean, there's gore there, right there. This, by the way, this is a picture by our friend, the French illustrator, Tissot. That's a Tissot picture right there. Yeah. Let me introduce another picture because this is really great too as the story goes on. Oh, by the way, so he died. That's in the text. Just in case you missed the import of all this. You put a tent peg through someone's head, they'll be dead. Just saying. Okay, so then the story goes on, verse 22. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Yael came out to meet him and said to him, this is one of my favorite pictures right here. It's like, hey, psst, right? And she's over there, and she says to him, come, I'll show you the man whom you're seeking. She says this to Barak and all the soldiers that are behind him outside. You're looking for a guy, right? I love this picture. Her pose just blows me away. It's the best thing ever. And then one more picture too. And he entered with her, and behold, Sisera was lying dead with a tent peg in his temple. Oh yeah. I know this is another one of the Tissot pictures. I love the look on his face. They've been traveling over 100 miles trying to find this guy. And this woman in a Kenite village says, psst, over here. What? There. Yeah. There's more? Yeah, just a little bit, and then we'll be done. So, scene 6, it's the end of Yabin. Yay, the bad king. So, God subdued on that day Yabin, the king of Canaan, before the sons of Israel, the hand of the sons of Israel pressed heavier and heavier upon Yabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Yabin and the king of Canaan. We're done. So Sisera is done. They chased him down. Yabin is done, and all the forces that he had, the entire occupation of Yabin, the king, and the Canaanites that were there, done. Done, done, and done. And who did it? God subdued. Nobody's. So we went from Israel crying out to God providing a deliverer. Now, was the deliverer Barak or Deborah or God himself? God himself. God comes and delivers them. And so, as a result in the story, Israel is fully delivered, not just from Sisera, but also from Yabin. And then, as the story goes on, you find that Israel is at peace for a while. But as you continue reading on past chapter 5, the Song of Deborah, doggone it, they go back to disobeying again. And they start a whole new cycle. So again, don't do what I said reading Judges if you're easily depressed. Because this cycle goes around and around. And the fascinating thing about this cycle going around about disobeying and crying out to God, and he delivers, and they disobey again. The amazing thing about that cycle isn't the fact that they disobey God after such great victories. The amazing thing is that God never gives up on them. He sees them going into the next cycle, and he says, I'll do this again. And he doesn't stand in front of them and say, you know what? In about 10 years, we're going to be right back here all over again. So tell you what, I'm not going to do this anymore. He never does that. He stays with them. And by the way, praise God, because that's what he does with us. You know? He says, well, I'll take care of you now. But, a month from now, you're going to be right back to this place. Yeah, well, yeah, I know. But God says, that's okay, because I love you. I hear your crying out. I'll deliver you. So it's just an amazing thing in Judges. So you could be depressed about this cycle in Judges, but the point is not to be depressed about the flaw of mankind. It's to be impressed with the patience and the perseverance of God's love toward the people he's chosen. And that, by the way, is you. That's us. He does this. So as a PS on all this, here's Mount Tabor today. It really sticks out. Many times when you tour Israel, you'll be over here on the far side. You'll look across this flat valley, and you'll see this little boop out in the middle of nowhere. But it has a little presence in the New Testament. So I would challenge you to take a look and see. If you go to Matthew 17, you'll see something amazing happen on this mountain. We're pretty sure, like 95% sure, it's not named, but we're pretty sure it's Tabor. And one of the most amazing things in the entire New Testament happens on the top of this mountain. And I'm not going to tell you what it is because I want you to read it. Matthew 17. Go read it later. And by the way, read later the Song of Deborah in chapter 5 of Judges. It's just remarkable. It's just remarkable.